Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Anne Francis, born September 16, 1930, died January 2, 2011, was an American actress best known for her striking beauty, intelligence, and iconic roles in mid-20th century film and television. With her trademark mole near her lip and commanding screen presence, she became a memorable figure in both science fiction and detective genres. Early life and career. Born Anne Lloyd Francis in Ossining, New York, she began her career as a child model and made her film debut in 1947 in This Time for Keeps. Throughout the late 1940s and early 1950s, she appeared in a number of supporting roles, often cast for her wholesome good looks. Breakthrough role: Forbidden Planet, 1956. Francis is perhaps best remembered for her starring role as Altaira Morbius in the groundbreaking science fiction classic Forbidden Planet, 1956. The film was notable for its special effects, electronic music score, and futuristic themes, and Francis stood out as one of the few strong female leads in 1950s sci-fi. Her performance helped elevate the genre and left a lasting cultural imprint. Honey West and television fame. In the mid-1960s, Francis made television history as the star of Honey West, 1965-1966. One of the first TV series to feature a female private detective as the lead character. With her black catsuit, martial arts skills, and pet ocelot, Honey West was a groundbreaking feminist icon. Blending glamour and grit. For this role, Francis received a Golden Globe nomination and helped pave the way for future female action heroines. Later career. Francis continued to work steadily in both film and television throughout the 1970s and 1980s, making guest appearances on popular series like Dallas, The Golden Girls, and Murder, She Wrote. Though her roles became less frequent, she remained respected for her professionalism and poise. Personal life and legacy. Anne Francis was also a writer and an advocate for women's rights. She penned an autobiography titled Voices from Home, an inner journey in which she discussed her spiritual beliefs, career reflections, and personal challenges, including surviving cancer. She passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2011 at the age of 80. Though never a typical Hollywood starlet, Anne Francis left a lasting impression with her intelligence, pioneering roles, and unique style. Today, she is remembered as a trailblazer, particularly for women in genre films and television, and as one of classic Hollywood's most distinctive talents. Early talent and determination. Anne Francis showed a flair for performance from a young age. During the Great Depression, she helped support her family by working as a child model. By the age of 5, she was appearing in department store ads and radio dramas. Her early exposure to show business instilled in her a sense of discipline and adaptability that would serve her well in Hollywood. She attended the Professional Children's School in New York City and studied acting at the Neighborhood Playhouse. Her natural beauty led to early film roles. But Francis was always more than just a pretty face. She was intelligent, ambitious, and determined to have a long career. Clapperboard film highlights. While Forbidden Planet is her most iconic role, Anne Francis had an impressively diverse filmography. Some notable appearances include Bad Day at Black Rock, 1955, a taut, suspenseful drama starring Spencer Tracy, in which Francis played a small but significant role. Her performance showed her ability to hold her own among heavyweight actors. Blackboard Jungle, 1955, a pioneering film about troubled inner-city youth, starring Glenn Ford and Sidney Poitier. Francis played Ford's supportive wife, showing her range in more grounded, emotional roles. Girl of the Night, 1960. In this daring role, she played a high-end call girl caught between exploitation and redemption. The film showcased her dramatic depth and willingness to take on taboo subjects. She also starred alongside some of the era's top male leads, including James Cagney, Paul Newman, and Rock Hudson. Woman detective Honey West. A feminist pioneer, Honey West, 1965–1966, was groundbreaking for television. Anne Francis played a smart, independent, and stylish private detective, the kind of role rarely given to women at the time. Inspired in part by the James Bond craze, Honey West carried gadgets, knew judo, and ran her own detective agency. Though it only ran for one season, the series was influential. Francis became a role model for a generation of girls who saw, perhaps for the first time, a woman in a traditionally masculine, action-packed role. It also set the stage for later shows like The Bionic Woman, Charlie's Angels, and Alias. TV later career and guest star era. Like many actresses of her generation, Francis transitioned to television guest roles in the 1970s and 1980s. She appeared in many iconic shows, including The Twilight Zone, Gunsmoke, The Mod Squad, Fantasy Island, Columbo, The Golden Girls, Murder. She wrote she often played characters with poise and strength, mothers, detectives, doctors, and remained in demand well into her 60s. Writing, handwriting, and spirituality. Later in life, Anne Francis became deeply interested in metaphysics, psychology, and spirituality. In her memoir, Voices from Home, An Inner Journey, she wrote about her experiences with meditation, personal growth, and cancer survival. She was candid about the challenges she faced as a woman in Hollywood and as a single mother raising two daughters, one of whom she adopted. She also spoke openly about the limitations placed on women in the entertainment industry, from being typecast to being undervalued after a certain age. Dizzy legacy. Anne Francis is often remembered in pop culture for her beauty and signature beauty mark, a mole just to the right of her lips, but her true legacy lies in her strength, versatility, and quiet pioneering spirit. She helped redefine women's roles in science fiction and detective dramas, balanced glamour with intelligence in an era that rarely rewarded both, maintained a long and steady career with grace and resilience. She's fondly remembered by sci-fi fans, feminist critics, and classic TV enthusiasts alike. In 2004, TV Guide named Honey West one of the 50 greatest TV characters of all time. Personal life and relationships. Anne Francis's personal life was, like many in Hollywood, marked by both independence and complexity. She was married twice. First marriage to Bamlett Lawrence Price Jr., a businessman, in 1952. The marriage was short-lived and ended in divorce in 1955. Second marriage, to Dr. Robert Abeloff, a psychiatrist, in 1960. The couple had one daughter, Jane Elizabeth Abeloff, born in 1962. They divorced in 1964. In addition to her biological daughter, Anne adopted another daughter, Margaret Maggie West, as a single parent, which was highly unconventional at the time. She often spoke of motherhood as her greatest joy and achievement. Francis was known to value her privacy. She did not have a tabloid-driven public image, and she managed to steer clear of the scandals that plagued many of her contemporaries. Woman in Lotus Position. Inner journey and spiritual life. As she grew older, Anne Francis became more introspective and spiritually focused. She studied Eastern philosophies, practiced meditation, and explored holistic healing. Her 1982 memoir, Voices from Home, An Inner Journey, was more than a typical Hollywood autobiography. It was part memoir, part spiritual reflection. In the book, she discussed the pressures of maintaining physical beauty in Hollywood, the challenges of aging in an image-obsessed industry, and her journey toward self-acceptance. She also wrote about her spiritual beliefs, her experiences with therapy, and her search for meaning beyond fame. Shot health struggles in the late 1970s and early 1980s, Anne Francis faced a significant health battle when she was diagnosed with lung cancer. She had smoked earlier in life, a common practice in classic Hollywood, but eventually became a vocal advocate for anti-smoking efforts and lung cancer awareness. Later, she developed pancreatic cancer, which ultimately led to her passing on January 2, 2011, at the age of 80. She died at a retirement home in Santa Barbara, California, surrounded by family. Her passing was widely reported and mourned by fans of classic film and television. Brain cultural influence. Anne Francis was never quite a household name on the scale of Marilyn Monroe or Elizabeth Taylor. And yet, her cultural influence is profound. In science fiction, Forbidden Planet remains a foundational text. Altaira Morbius, her character, was one of the first fully realized women in the genre. And Francis's mix of vulnerability and intelligence became a template for sci-fi heroines to come. In feminist television history, Honey West is frequently cited as a forerunner to modern action heroines. Shows like Alias, Veronica Mars, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Jessica Jones owe a debt to her portrayal of a glamorous but capable private eye. In popular memory, her unique style, from her sultry voice to her unmistakable beauty mark, made her a staple in fan conventions, retrospectives, and nostalgia-based publications. She remains a cult icon. In legacy, Anne Francis represents a kind of Hollywood survivor, someone who navigated the highs and lows of the industry, resisted being typecast, and aged with dignity and clarity of self. Movie Camera Select filmography highlights. Here are a few key titles that showcase her range. Year Film TV Title Roll Notes 1955 Bad Day at Black Rock Liz Worth Crime Drama with Spencer Tracy 1955 Blackboard Jungle Ann Dadier Urban Classroom Drama 1956 Forbidden Planet Altaira Morbius Sci-fi Classic 1960 Girl of the Night Robin, Bobby Williams Drama about prostitution 1965 Honey West, TV, Honey West Lead Role Female Private Eye 1973 Columbo, A Stitch in Crime Sharon Martin Memorable Columbo Episode 1984 The Golden Girls Trudy guest star as Blanche's rival 1989 Murder. She wrote various guest roles multiple appearances Candle Final Resting Place Anne Francis is interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills, California, a resting place for many screen legends. Her epitaph reads, "Love is the most important thing." Style, symbol, and screen presence. Anne Francis was often cast as a combination of beauty and brains, a rare pairing in mid-20th century Hollywood. She exuded a modern sensuality that was cool, intelligent, and self-possessed. While other actresses of her time leaned into bombshell personas, like Jane Mansfield or Mamie Van Doren, Francis brought a cerebral quality to her allure. Trademark look. Her blonde hair, soft-spoken voice, and famous beauty mark, which she refused to remove despite studio pressure, became part of her signature. It helped set her apart, a visual identifier that added to her mystique. Wardrobe and presence. Whether dressed in a flowing futuristic gown in Forbidden Planet or a sleek black catsuit in Honey West, her fashion choices always communicated empowerment. She didn't use clothing to play submissive or demure, her characters wore clothing like armor. She often played women who challenged male authority, quietly subverting the patriarchal norms of the time. That made her characters feel progressive even before the second-wave feminist movement took hold. Megaphone critical reception and public appreciation. Anne Francis was frequently praised for her versatility. While she rarely received major awards, a reflection more of the era's sexism than her talent. Critics often noted her ability to bring emotional authenticity to roles in pulp genres. New York Times critic Bosley Crowther called her radiant and effortlessly grounded in a 1956 review. Sci-fi and noir enthusiasts especially respected her work, hailing her as someone who gave gravitas to characters that would otherwise be ornamental. While she never became a full-fledged A-list movie star, she achieved something more rare, a long and steady career, fueled by professionalism and credibility. Face mask off-screen character. Those who worked with Anne Francis frequently described her as witty and thoughtful, with a quiet confidence. Focused and professional, always prepared on set. Kind but private, not prone to gossip or Hollywood drama. Deeply introspective, especially later in life, when she wrote and spoke about the importance of emotional healing and inner peace. In her memoir and interviews, she expressed disappointment with the limitations the film industry placed on women, but never with bitterness. She remained philosophical, encouraging younger actresses to demand better roles and treatment. Globe-enduring legacy movie camera in pop culture today. Anne Francis continues to influence pop culture in subtle but clear ways. In science fiction, Forbidden Planet is often referenced in documentaries and retrospectives about the genre's golden age. Altaira remains one of the earliest female sci-fi leads who wasn't simply the damsel. In detective fiction, Honey West has been referenced in shows like Veronica Mars and Agent Carter, as a prototype for stylish, empowered, female investigators. In fan culture, she is regularly honored at classic film festivals, sci-fi conventions, and noir retrospectives. Collectibles, signed photos, and vintage merchandise from Honey West are still highly valued. In feminist film criticism, her career is often cited in academic work exploring how early Hollywood actresses navigated typecasting, ageism, and gender politics. Speech balloon. Famous quotes by or about Anne Francis: "I wanted to be more than just another pretty face, and I was lucky enough to find roles that let me be. She was the perfect blend of elegance and electricity." Leonard Maltin. Film critic: Honey West was James Bond in high heels, and Anne made it believable. TV historian Joanna Wilson. Receipt. Final thoughts. Anne Francis's story is one of longevity, quiet revolution, and elegance on her own terms. She didn't chase scandal or fame. She worked steadily, raised children, explored her spirit, and left behind roles that still resonate. In an industry that often devours its own, she survived with grace, kept her integrity, and aged with dignity. An icon not only of beauty, but of strength, brains, and timeless class. Deep cuts, lesser-known highlights from her career. While Forbidden Planet and Honey West are her marquee titles, Anne Francis's range extended across genres, tones, and formats. Some forgotten or underrated gems include Susan Slept Here, 1954, a romantic comedy with Debbie Reynolds and Dick Powell. Francis played the other woman, revealing her comedic timing. The Rack, 1956, a courtroom drama co-starring Paul Newman, where Francis played a loyal fiancé in a serious dialogue-heavy role. It showed her capacity for emotional restraint. Guest roles on anthology series like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Playhouse 90, and The Twilight Zone, where she played complex, morally ambiguous characters, often subverting the blonde bombshell trope. Funny Girl, 1968, though uncredited, she appeared in a brief scene with Barbra Streisand, marking a moment where old Hollywood quietly passed the torch to a new generation. DNA influence on genre storytelling. Anne Francis's career bridged the golden age of studio films and the television revolution, and she helped reshape the narrative space for women in genre entertainment. Ringed planet in science fiction. Altaira Morbius in Forbidden Planet was one of the earliest representations of a woman in science fiction who was not a helpless victim, scientifically curious and intelligent, the emotional center of the film. Rather than an accessory to male characters, she predated Star Trek's Uhura, Barbarella, and Leia Organa, and many later sci-fi writers credit Forbidden Planet as a foundational influence. Sunglasses in crime and noir, Honey West flipped the gumshoe genre on its head. Her character was physically capable, trained in judo and combat, technologically savvy, with spy gadgets and a radio wristwatch, predating the Apple Watch by decades, emotionally self-sufficient, rarely needing rescue. She walked the line between classic film noir femme fatale and new age feminist icon, setting a blueprint followed by Emma Peel, The Avengers, Modesty Blaze, and modern-day figures like Jessica Jones and Veronica Mars. Mirror public image versus private intellect. Anne Francis once said, "The business wanted me to be a sexy blonde. I wanted to be something more." And she was. Her intellectual depth was rarely highlighted by the media, but off-screen she was a voracious reader of metaphysics, psychology, and comparative religion, an early voice on body autonomy and women's rights, especially around motherhood and adoption, a philosophical thinker whose book Voices from Home deals with reincarnation, dreams, and the nature of self. In many ways, she was ahead of her time, speaking openly about inner work and spirituality decades before it became mainstream in Hollywood circles. Busts in silhouette in the eyes of peers and critics. Here are just a few sentiments expressed.
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.